right, let's start with block 3. Last block of today, advancing data skills. Again, we have a lot of exciting speakers, and we will start with our keynote, which is by Ladislav Krištoufek. He's our keynote speaker. He's also the Vice-Rector for Research at Charles University. He teaches econometrics and data science at the Institute of Economic Studies, and he's also one of the most cited social science researchers working in the Czech Republic. He will present Data Matters and Data Matter. Please welcome Ladislav Krištoufek. You could also jump.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. I was playing with the idea that the title could also be the Data Matter, Data Matter and Data Matters, but that was probably too dramatic, maybe way too cute. So it's Data Matters and Data Matter, and I think that's good enough. So where are we? I have it here and there, so I'll be probably looking there a bit. So as we know, the world is changing, it's ever evolving, and in technologies, it's evolving really fast and getting even faster. I'm not going to say exponentially because I actually know what it means, so that's trickier to actually use that word. So very quickly, and where we are is that we are driven by these technologies, by policy shifts, and we are getting to the situation where we as researchers, as research managers, as stewards, as everyone in the whole area is expected to know a lot of things. Now the question is, does everyone need to know everything? Does everyone need to be great at everything? And the simple answer is no, luckily, which is good. But we are in this situation when there are so many skills that we need to cover, that the teams need to cover. When doing research, or so-called doing research, is becoming very, very complex, and doing it properly and rightly or correctly is even more problematic. So there is this, and at Charles University we try to focus on that a lot, is the whole framework around how to do research properly, how to get research competencies, so the whole research.com thing. Put together, or in these graphics, as you can see, there are various areas where the specific skills are needed and the ones you should cover. The tricky part is that out of these, when we read them just quickly, doing research, managing research, making impact, self-management, cognitive abilities, working with others, and managing research tools, so what, 7 of them, researchers usually think that the only thing they're supposed to do is this, which is doing research. Whatever it means, right? Doing research is, let me just be in the lab, just write the paper, I don't care about anything else. But from my perspective, the ideal situation is that doing research is actually here in the center, or is the cloud around everything, and that doing research actually means all these things. Not that it's only just one part that researchers think they're supposed to do, and everything else is additional administrative burden that they need to care about. Of course, the question is that here, or at least in this community, we can cry about that this is how it's supposed to be. But the tricky part, and for me as a vice-rector, well, not here as a vice-rector, not necessarily, but for me as a policymaker in this sense, the tricky part always is how to make it so that people actually figure it out themselves without knowing it. Okay? So how to find the proper incentives to actually motivate them to get to the situation where we wanted them in the first place. And that's very complicated because first, there are not that many instruments that you can use. Second, they're not stupid. And third, they are often lazy, right? Efficient, let's call it. So we need to fight with this to a certain point. And how to fight that is really trying to find these little holes where this better environment and better space can be put together through interdisciplinary collaboration, through transparent and reproducible research. And we have all these stories in the previous session. I saw just part of it, but was about these specific stories. I have stories of my own, but I will not bore you with them. Maybe if I have time left, I might bore you with them. So why is advancing data skills as a part of it important? Why is it important now. So we got to the situation where we have loads of data, and we know, or we want to make use of the data. And of course, it's simpler, or at least hypothetically, and I'm now speaking as an economist, right? Economists, we used to think about stuff a little bit differently. Data is a second or third thing you care about. You first start with a research hypothesis. Well, you start with a theory. From the theory, you have research hypothesis. Then you start thinking about what kind of data you might use and make it useful, then the methodologies that you use, and then you get to the testable stuff, right? So use the data, test the hypothesis. If it works, if you validated it, then your theory probably works, or at least you didn't find that it didn't work. Now it got to the other side where we have loads of data, so we are getting more into the engineering part, okay? Which is that we start from the data, which is not from the standard scientific perspective, not too scientific, right? It's more engineering. So starting from the data is a huge paradigm shift, even if we don't realize it. For a standard scientist, data is a second or third step. The theory and the hypothesis are the first. Data is only the instrument how to get to validation, but not from the other way around. But for me, that's specifically funny because I teach, or I used to teach, both econometrics and data science. So two not completely different ways of approaching the problems, but very different ways how to approach these kinds of things. But of course, why do we need this at all? We got to the situation where we see all the data, we need to work with the data, we need to do it properly. One thing that's super important, and you talked about it in the previous session as well, is to make more stuff reproducible. That's something relatively revolutionary. And again, the incentives and the motivation to actually do that are not there that much. I remember a few years back when this one journal, relatively decent, Energy Economics, so not top tier, but relatively reasonable, started with this idea that they wouldn't accept submissions without the data and code. That was like 9 years ago. And that was quite revolutionary for economics. So we did that, and it was great. It was actually a great idea because it forced you to actually do your code properly, to at least somehow manage your data, because you didn't want to look stupid, right? You don't send like messy data set, you don't send a code that, if it gets published, looks like, not good. So that was actually a good thing, but it came from a journal, and it was really unique because they don't have much motivation. What is the hidden motivation there? The hidden motivation always is, and that's the tricky part, and I will drift off a little bit, about these incentives. Why would you want to make your data available? Why would you want to make your code available? Most direct thing is that there is relatively reasonable evidence that if you have open data, or if the data is attached to your paper and the code is attached to your paper, you get more citations, right? So that's relatively well grounded. Now, of course, the question is, okay, so what? Who cares about citations, specifically in Czech Republic? Not many people, actually, right? What the Czech system cares about is whether you published in a reasonable journal. We don't care much about whether anyone actually reads it. So as long as this is the case, it's quite difficult to change that. We are getting, like, there are some changes. Institutions start to care about citations a little bit more. In other countries, that's way more important. Is the paper cited? Do people care about stuff that you actually do? Not only were you able to push it to that specific journal. So that's a very different way of thinking. We talk about rankings a lot. Rankings, university rankings, care about citations. They don't care about impact factors, for example. Okay, so there are signs that this could change, but we need to find or keep finding these motivations. How to make people realize that they should do this stuff. Connected to this specific journal as well was another quite interesting experiment that they ran, and that wasn't that successful actually, is that they ran a whole issue on replications. So it was, for you, submit a paper that is a direct replication of a paper that we, as this specific journal, published before, which was first thing to do, because replications are simple, right? If you are actually replicating something that was done properly. If you are replicating something that wasn't done properly, that's a good, opportunity for you to actually show how it's supposed to be done. So for me personally, because I like to show people how it's supposed to be done, I got like 2 papers published there because I just picked 2 relatively random papers that were close to my expertise. And I was like, okay, so let's reproduce that. Reasonable impact factor, why not, right? Simple, it's replication. So I did these 2, showed how it's supposed to be done because it wasn't done properly, got published and it was good. That was great motivation, right? But the thing is that they didn't continue with that because these replications, they're not cited. So they don't improve the impact factor of the journal. So the journal is not really motivated because they want to have all these metrics. So that was a great idea from my perspective, because the research needs to be reproducible, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Of course, in the days of generative AI and these models, ideally, we get to the situation where you are forced to submit data, you're forced to submit a code, and in a pre-step before it actually gets to the editor, there is this automatic check whether it actually works. Right? Whether you haven't submitted something completely rubbish that looks like a code. So we have the means. The challenges are relatively obvious. The fact that it's there doesn't mean that we know how to do it and that we are motivated why to do it. And that's what I talked about a bit. So what do the researchers need? They need new skills, of course, but they also need institutional support and the combination of both. But as I said, not everyone needs to be able to do everything. So one of the points in one of the previous slides was collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration. What we keep hearing about is this interdisciplinarity over and over again. But no one wants to fund it. It's usually more difficult to get published. Why it's not funded? Because no one knows how to evaluate that in the process, right? So you get like ping-ponged around different panels. Then in the end, they put the reports together and they say, okay, well, it's good there and there, but it's not great in either. So we will not fund it. So that doesn't work. We also have this push towards getting the disciplines closer and closer. There is this huge push how to make social sciences and humanities closer to the natural sciences. And I specifically, in this case, think that this is a great playground where to make the disciplines work together more in the analytical skills, in treating the data. Because the truth be told, even though colleagues from the natural sciences and medicine probably wouldn't like to hear that, is that in social sciences and humanities, the analytical apparatus is way more complicated and robust than in natural sciences and medicine, right? What is usually done in medicine at the PhD level is like bachelors of economics, right? And from the analytical perspective, right? So there is this skill in social sciences and humanities that is way above the standard analytical skill set in natural sciences and humanities. So there is this huge pool of social scientists, some humanities as well, it's mostly social sciences, where this interdisciplinarity is not necessarily in the research area kind of way, but the way how the data is treated, how it's curated, how it's worked with, how we are used to coding. Of course, social scientists are not computer scientists, obviously, but the way how social scientists are used to actually code, and they are supposed to, how to treat the analysis, well, can be utilized way more. So I see this as one way how to make the disciplines work closer together, not necessarily through the topics, but through the means. But what we need there is for people to actually realize that it's about team, but the team is not just about the topic itself, but it's about this whole teamwork that is not just doing research, but it's about data, it's about coding, and all of these people are actually researchers. Whether we call them one way or the other, they are part of the research team, and it's one research team regardless of the discipline. As I said, this whole research.com framework is relatively robust. One thing, or maybe two things I would like to mention here in particular, where we will need to, the area that will need to be focused on in the coming years, particularly, are the intellectual property rights. That's something that sounds very niche in a way, but since the boundaries between fundamental research, applied research, oriented research, or whatever the English name for that is, they are very fuzzy. And if you are observing how FP10 is being framed and how it's all going, these there is going to be just one research, pretty much, right? So the part about intellectual property and how to treat that is going to be one of very important things. And what researchers or scientists in general are not really used to is to think about whether their possible fundamental research or what they think is fundamental research can be utilized in coming years, and whether they should actually take this into consideration at the very beginning of the process. And then in the end, of course, they get to the situation where there might be some applicability, but there were so many mistakes at the very beginning that it cannot be utilized at all. And all this possible profit for them, for the institution, it's gone. Okay. So if this is treated complexly from the very beginning, that wouldn't happen. Of course, it's very costly. So we always need to find these balances, and that's when the institutions come in. Because the institutions, I want to say constitutions for some reason, institutions, they can use the economies of scale, right? On a central level, you can find resources to actually finance this kind of expertise, which each specific separate team wouldn't be able to actually fund, and that makes sense. Okay, I'll probably speed up a little bit. The important point is also, I mentioned it already to a certain level. There are many areas that need to be covered, and it's unlikely that each person will be great in each of them. So the direction where we are leading, and we are, in some areas, we are actually used to that. We are used to huge research teams. It's usually natural sciences and medicine, not so much maybe in social sciences, but it's getting there as well. But it's the treatment of who actually is the part of the research team. So the biggest trouble I see, at least from the medium-term perspective, let's say, is that researchers often see very narrow group of people as the actual researchers, and the rest is some supportive cast, right? And this supportive cast either is respected, that's good, or really treated as this burden in the sense that we are doing that just to meet these check marks somewhere along the way. So we really need to push towards the idea that this doing research, as I said at the very beginning, is actually covering all these things together into one research team. And the whole research team comprises all these expertises that can be covered. Whether they are all written on the paper or not, that's another issue, and I'm not going into this. But from my perspective, why not, right? But the main point is that each and everyone who actually takes part in the research is a researcher. Right? And this way, if this changes, we can get there. Where does it need to start? It needs to start at the very beginning. And again, that's where the institutions can actually come into play. I will skip that. Yeah, that's where I'm heading. Is at which level we need to do this. Super important part, and it's actually happening quite a bit, is that the standard analytical and data skills need to be part of the pre-graduate level for sure. Okay, so my perspective is that basic statistics, basic data management should be part of practically each study program at the bachelor's level. Okay? It can be one semester course, why not? But basic statistics needs to be everywhere. I cannot really think about a discipline. Okay, I might maybe, but it will be just several that I could probably count. Several disciplines where you don't need any data or analytical skills. So this baseline, this part where statistics, in whichever sense, of course we can discuss what statistics actually is, but should be part of the pre-graduate courses straight away. Then of course you get further into the career. So if a person is a researcher, so in the PhD position or the postdoc, we get to the situation when the central support from the institutions can come, and you can cover various levels of expertise that is being needed. But at the central level, you usually can support only the stuff that is universal across disciplines, which is usually stuff around ethics. It is also about the intellectual property. It is, what else? Ethics and intellectual property. I think these are the most important ones that are universal or general across various disciplines, and we don't really need to distinguish much across these. And then for senior researchers, that's quite complicated. Okay, so for senior researchers, it's usually about their specific expertise, and I don't think that at a central level there's much training to be provided for them, apart from very specific courses. But these are economically very problematic. But then, of course, as I always say, we should start from the beginning, not from the end. So I think that if we get to the discussion of these two, and we get to the reasonable level, then we can have conferences and discussions about senior researchers. But let's start at the beginning. Okay. Now I keep jumping back and forth. So I'm sorry about that. But with respect to time, let's talk about data stewards for a bit. But we will have one of the flash talks, or two of them are connected to that. The idea here, or you probably sensed it from my talk, that I really think that these data skills are needed, are transferable, are useful across practically all disciplines. And data stewards, that's a very generic term, very broad term, of course, that we can talk about. But the roles they can play are quite wide. So one perspective is actually really being just administrative or mostly administrative. Advisors working as support with respect to institutional policies, ensuring the infrastructure and support in the place, somehow bridge the researchers and the supporting services. On the other side, data stewards are also can be actual researchers. Okay, so they are like losing this steward part of what they're doing, and they're becoming actual analysts, right? And then you get to the situation where you discuss, okay, are they part of the team? Should they be on the papers, etc., etc. But their role is there as well, being actual part of the team, not being viewed just as a supportive task. Yeah, I have 5 minutes, so I will probably click through this a little bit. The institutions, and that's one thing we actually just coincidence. We just renewed our institutional ethics board. Well, there are 2 different ethics boards, right? So, but obviously, this is one thing that, in the days of huge amounts of data, not many people knowing how to actually treat them, plus AI, the ethics boards are going to become more and more important. And that was a challenge for us as well, how to make these boards actually useful. Okay? So as you know, at universities, what you usually do is that if you have a board, then you either fill it with the rectorate employees or administrative staff, or not staff, or just with professors, right? Neither way works. So what we did is to mix them together. That was what I was trying to do always, or almost always, as a vice-rector, trying to mix these 2 teams, because they are not 2 teams, they are 1 team, right? But they usually think that there are 2 teams, or at least the professors, they think that there are 2 teams, right? So really trying to somehow merge them together without fight, for them to see that they need each other, right? Because the expertises, they come from different aspects, different areas, and these need to be matched together. I think the way we put that together was actually quite good. We had first meetings, so it's, you never know. But the way they talk and how it seems that the cooperation would actually work. And of course, experts in data management, data stewards, whoever connected to the data issues in a very generic term need to be part of these research boards, because that's one of the most important parts that will be coming. And we need to be ready for that, because much of it is, of course, learning by doing. Okay, so the bottom line. I have 2 minutes or something? Great. So sorry for jumping quickly through it. But my bottom line there is, or hope maybe, is that we need to, at the policy level, so tell that at your universities and institutes of the academy, is to look for the ways how to motivate people. Okay? Because the worst thing to do is to tell researchers, you must do this data management plan to get a grant. Just to take this, you need to follow these guidelines. Here are the guidelines, 20 pages. Read through them, make sure that they actually work. That never works. Or it will work in the sense that they will tick it, right? So policy-wise, what we need to do, and it's challenging. I'm not saying that it's done, that I know how to do it or whatever, but the good thing is realization, that we actually need to do that, is to keep finding ways how to motivate people to actually want to do these things and see the benefits, because they are not obvious. And maybe we figure out that some of the things are actually not needed because there is no benefit. And if there is no benefit, then really we don't need it. Okay, so trying to figure this out, talk across institutions, share the experience, because otherwise it doesn't work. So that's one thing. Second thing is trying, and that also takes loads of time, a lot of pushes at the institutional level, is really trying to mix these teams, maybe even clubs, if we think about that, mix them together, try to find opportunities to mix the support and the academics, mix them together, make them talk, because then everyone in the end realizes that we are all people, we can talk, and we see that often we have the same target, we have the same aim, and we realize usually that when we work together, it is actually more efficient. It is better to do it that way. So that's second thing. Try to put people together, put them in one place, again, without realizing what you are actually doing. So that's fostering the institution, making them work together, and maybe get to the point where they realize that this doing research also has all this boring stuff for them now, boring stuff, that it actually is part of the research itself, because without clean data, without reproducibility, without clean codes, without data being actually properly managed, that's not proper research. That's just writing papers that get published, but that's not the aim. Ideally, the aim is to come up with something new, something that can be validated, something that actually works, and not to just have several ticks in your or on your CV. That's the hope, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ladislav, for that really, really interesting and I think motivating talk for all of us. Let's move on to the lightning presentations. First up, we have Feichtinger, who is the Data Steward Coordinator at the University of Vienna, where he co-leads the development of institutional research data management services. And he's going to have a presentation on Introduction to the Data Steward Certificate course at the University of Vienna. Please welcome Michal.
I thought there might also be a staircase on that side, so there is none for the speakers coming after me. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Today I'm going to talk about the Data Steward Certificate course that we have set up at the University of Vienna. So in 2020, there was this LIBA recommendation on the 6 pillars of engaging researchers in research data management. And one of these recommendations was to train locally based data stewards who are connected to different services, such as the library, IT, legal, contract or project managers, and so on. So kind of yeah, this sparked the idea of developing maybe some kind of specialized training for data stewards to prepare people for this actually very challenging role where you have to combine domain-specific knowledge, knowledge about research data management, maybe also a lot of soft skills like conflict resolution. You need to be maybe a project manager, a change manager in a very often high resistance environment. So yeah, the idea was to set up some kind of program to train these people to be successful in that job. And yeah, our Data Steward Certificate program is mainly consisting of 3 big pillars. So one is, of course, the competence acquisition. So you need to learn a lot about research data management and maybe also about how to set up trainings, how to conduct a needs assessment, how to do requirements engineering, and so on. Then a second big part of this certificate course, and the idea that we had already initially, was that also this course should live from peer-to-peer learning to bring together, in the best case, international, in reality, mainly European data stewards to learn from each other within the course. And as another aspect, as very often we see data stewards being the only data steward at a research institution in the beginning, and they're very lonely, and it's good to find a community where you can kind of exchange and yeah, also kind of have a bit of a self-help group for data stewards, and it will also be an idea of this course. Yeah, now some facts regarding this certificate program. It's a part-time further education program that is based on a former certificate course that was called Data Librarian and was then extended on that during a project that was called Fair Data Austria. It gives a certificate from the University of Vienna. The language of the whole course is in English to really invite participants from all over the world. The course takes 2 semesters and is for researchers and research support staff. And the idea is to upskill maybe already existing staff or people who might want to get into the job of a data steward. And the costs are 3,200 euros. Yeah, to talk quickly a bit about the content of the certificate course. So it kind of structures in these 5 modules that build up on each other. So we have the first module that usually takes place in Vienna. This is the only part of the course that is taking place in person. Everything else is online, where we cover the basics of research data management and open science. And of course, this week in Vienna contributes a lot to the community building aspect of this course. And then another part of the foundation is then module 2, which is the basics of IT and data science. You're not gonna really learn to be a very sophisticated programmer after that, but at least you are able to talk with IT staff and with data scientists and understand their terms and their language. And module 3 is then kind of the big body of the course, where you really learn about fair data in the research data lifecycle. And then we have module 4, which deals mainly with RDM support, what I already mentioned, needs assessment, requirements engineering, also a little bit of project management, how to create trainings. And the last module, yeah, I'm already finished. And the last module is then a project work that in most cases is something the data stewards can apply to the actual position. Yeah. And with that, I'm already at the end. Next application period will open in April next year. And you can find the homepage under this QR code. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mikael. I love your sweater. I also loved your talk, and I thought they went really well together. So anyway, let's continue now with Jan Dvořák. Jan is a researcher and lecturer at the Faculty of Arts, Charles University. He specializes in current research information systems and scholarly communication. He's going to be presenting on the Data Steward Microcertificate course at Charles University. Please welcome Jan.
Hello, thank you. So another Data Steward course, this time taught in Prague at Charles University. This is a 1 semester course. These are the topics: basics of open science, the motivations, research data lifecycle, data management plans, data processing, stuff like that you would expect it, yeah. What I think is a bit special about us is that we talk a lot about synergies with research project management. The competences we would like to build, or at least build the basics of in our students, is to explain and defend the need for data steward within an institution, describe the risks of insufficient data management, liaise with the other actors in their space, which I think is extremely important within the administration, within the management, within the academic staff, and seek help. Yeah, I would very much relate to what we have said as well. The extent is 7 full-day or half-day meetings in Prague, which includes also site visits in our partner institutions. The language of instruction is Czech. However, there are assignments. One assignment is a data management plan that is being done in English. And that leads to a Microcertificate, 5 points worth. Timeline, we started with the idea in 2023, got accredited as a Microcertificate course. We got a pilot run. This year, in spring, we had a first regular run for 15 students from very much diverse disciplines, and we are going to repeat. So this is what is brewing up. This is the price, so it's slightly cheaper than the Vienna course. This is about 500 euros, excuse me. Applications, if you got a colleague who might be interested, applications in 2 weeks' time, the deadline. Yeah, so that's organized by our humble Institute of Information Science and Librarianship at the Faculty of Arts, Charles University, in cooperation with the National Library of Technology, with the Czech Social Science Data Archive, with the Imaging Methods Laboratory at the Faculty of Science, and the marvelous Center for Open Science, Central Library. Could you please wave your hands, participate? Yeah, thank you very much. With presentations from other institutions as well. And that's my part, yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan. Let's move on. There's been a bit of a change in the program because Tomáš Marek is unwell, unfortunately, so we will not be hearing from him today. So we're going to move on straight to Jan Vališ, and Jan is a PhD researcher at the University of Chemistry and Technology Prague, applying machine learning to Raman spectroscopy diagnostics, and also serves as a faculty data steward. And he will be presenting on building RDM and OS skills from the ground up. Please welcome Jan Vališ.
Thank you very much, and very nice pronunciation on the Raman. So now to satisfy both our funders, here's a green slide. And here's a red slide. So as previously mentioned, I'm not only working in the National Library of Technology, but also serve as a data steward in the University of Chemistry and Technology, and that is actually where we start. So what motivates the way we decided to actually support and build the research data management skills at UCT, but also through the National Library of Technology? Usually, we don't really meet the PhD candidates in research data management, future stewards, at the beginning of their career. We usually first meet the PIs. Now, it might look like I'm talking trash about them. It's just description of the real situation. It's not judging. I know they are busy people, but there is a ground deadline, and ideally few days maybe weeks before that, they approach us and kindly ask if they could have us write something, a generic mumbo-jumbo for the research data management or open science part. The worst situation is if they are actually angry that it's not ready for them. Then maybe they get the grant, then they do the research, journal publication, conferences, the happy times, right? But then grant report. So the usual first interim report, 15th of January. So around the 10th of January, you can expect your email inbox to be quite full, because then they actually ask you, could you do the DMP for me? Why do I need the DMP if I don't publish the data? That's another rabbit hole. Very often, this is almost a direct citation of our vice dean, by the way, for research and development. Nobody checks it, so I'm not doing it anyway. And yeah, Chinese will steal the data. We've heard that already. It's a very popular one. And obviously, I can't publish the data because I'm asking for a patent right after I publish the journal application. So you can see that people could use some education in the research data management, open science, IPR, precisely as previously mentioned, but it's usually not the senior researchers that will get this kind of education, because this looks awfully like the grief stages. We are around here, so anger and bargaining, usually around the 15th of January. But the good news is, usually when they submit the DMP with some sort of assistance from our side, there becomes the acceptance. And the acceptance usually looks like, next time I'm not doing that, I've got a PhD candidates or postdocs that will do that for me. To which we say, great, they won't argue with us. Why not get some training? And that's exactly what we do. So we've got plenty of materials for self-study, self-paced courses, that's the data stewardship course, either the module 1 that is available both at NTK and UCT, but we also do webinars and in-person workshops. So the webinars are both at NTK and also here through the EOSC training center. These are Czech, these are English. The STEM repositories, so some topical webinars that are available online as well. But we mainly focus nowadays on the in-person workshops, because we found that it actually works kind of better if the people cannot do the ironing and keeping up, and they really need to pay the attention. And tomorrow we are deciding where to publish the data. It's more funny if you are Czech, because this is the translation of Kamsním. So that's deciding on where to publish the data for early career researchers, data preparation and publication. So these 2 workshops are mainly focused on, you come with some data or idea about your project, and you essentially leave with the research data management plan over here with the DMP almost ready to be submitted. And over here, you leave with a full README file, or even perhaps as an auto deposit ready for you to be submitted. So these are the upcoming events. And we obviously provide not only the education, but also the support in the form of individual consultations. We realize that this is quite an individual task, so some things can be generalized, some things are better dealt with in person. People are apparently quite happy. This is the average of, I think, 8 courses. It's 4.5, and this is, by the way, the 2 standard deviations is 0.7. And again, as previously mentioned, similarly to the Vienna course, our idea is not necessarily to make every researcher a data steward. The idea is that they should at least understand each other, and they seem to quite appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. So I just want to say, there's 2 Jans in this session. So when you write your question, you can't just write Jan. You have to add the surname. I mean, I'm not gonna, that's up to you guys. Anyway, let's move on. It's a very uncommon name in Czech Republic. Okay.
Try to be called Jan Dvořák.
Damn, what a hard life you must have. All right, I don't have a segue. Please, please welcome Georgia Koutentaki. I hope I pronounced that. I'm so sorry. Okay. Georgia is a data steward for STEM disciplines within the National Repository Platform and an active member of the data stewards community in Czech Republic. And she's from the Faculty of Information Technology, Czech Technical University in Prague. She's going to be presenting the role of a data steward in educational processes. Please welcome Georgia.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you from such a height, first time in my life. So I'm going to talk about the role of data steward in educational processes, but I will not go into theory. I will be very practical and show you how it is in Czech Republic. As said, I'm data steward actually both with Jan in VŠHT and in the National Repository Platform for ČVUT. And, oh, sorry, I don't know why it doesn't look very nice, but basically I'm showing you here the map of data stewards in Czech Republic. And you can write in this little slot there, if you go to the QR code, it will reach you to the page. And you can write the name of the steward you're looking for or your institution. If you don't know, if you have a data steward, you will see you probably have and who is the person to contact. There is the email, and there is also information about how long this person has been a data steward, so you can find help around Czech Republic. And the data stewards community is actually quite active, and we like to talk and we like to meet. We basically have data stewards, but also other members like open science coordinators or people who work with data in general, and some researchers or managers of projects who are part of the community. And we also talk a lot with international people, like with Michael here. We talk a lot with him. We want him to be our collaborator. And we also have a smaller subgroup of the community that is the STEM data stewards. We are still part of the main community, but we meet sometimes to discuss about things that are related to STEM sciences and affect the data stewards who work with the STEM. And we're very friendly, as you see here. We meet twice per year in person, but we meet also a lot online. And we have, for example, constant exchange of advice and information in Discord. We use this platform because it was very easy to set up and to communicate through it. And it's really a place of information and a place in where you can ask for help, you can ask for advice. And yeah, this is what we do basically. So if you need a data steward, you can find us. And if you don't need, but you are one, you can join the community, and then you will find more job. And last but not least, the data stewards of the National Repository Platform, which you have already heard about today, have collaborated with other parts of the team in the creation of the Data Stewardship Wizard for the NRP platform, which is a tool for creating data management plans, but not only, but the main use that is known in Czech Republic, it's this. And basically it's a pilot mode right now, but you can use it for free if you log in through the infrastructure. And it looks very nice, so try it out. The link is above there, sorry. And that's it. Thank you.
That was so lightning. Thank you, everyone, for sticking to the time. Congrats you. Thank you very much. We have 10 minutes now, so I'm going to talk to you about my weekend trip in Paris. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to move on. Okay, come to me after if you want to hear about it. I'm sorry, it's late in the evening. I'm starting to get a little woo. All right. It's time for a Q&A session. Please scan the QR code, and also please welcome the chair for this session, Matej Antol, who's the principal project manager of EOSC. And you've already met Matej. He's going to be our session chair today. All right, give it up for Matej.
Thank you. Thank you. One, two, thank you. You could have stayed. Please, can we make a banana shape over here so we can see to the eye of each other and to the public, to everybody in the room. I've been making some notes. And first question, It seems to me that we have understanding that we will have these specialized forces or people at the universities, which we now call data stewards, that will help us with the workload with the data. On the other hand, we know that researchers will have to change their behavior to some extent as well, because they won't just simply offload all these duties to these professionals. I like your framing when you said, Ladislav, that it should be inclusive, we should force them to be in one room to understand each other and so forth, but still the researchers will have to change and they will have to acquire new skills. What would be the number one skill? If you can boil it down, if you can generalize, anybody, what would be the number one skill that the researchers should uptake? Anybody, really?
I think that is kind of a tricky answer. I think for our researchers at UCT, because we are a STEM university, so we've got the hard data, it would be the adoption of the electronic lab notebooks. Because if they adopt the lab notebook, it's not necessarily a skill, it's like a change in life for them. It will actually make the life and sharing the data down the road and fairness of the data way easier. It will get rid of one of the principal activation barriers where most of the researchers then, that is some of the extra work that they would need to do to present the data in a reasonable way. So if they decide to adopt the ELN, work with it, incorporate it into their workflow, I think that would make quite a difference.
Can I? Well, I would maybe be very pessimistic in comparison, but I would say that for me, the first thing that needs to be relearned and nothing new is, I can call it data management, I can call it just find out what your data is. Basically, the core of research needs to be reevaluated at the beginning of the university. So when we start university, we need to remind the researchers what they are going to do and that they are dealing with data. And it sounded like you laughed at me. So and that they are dealing with data. And a lot of times the problem is that they don't know what the data is. So that's where I would start. I would start by giving them information about what the data is and not teaching them anything yet about how to deal with them, but first to figure them out.
So besides training new data stewards, I also do a lot of training of PhD students. And I think what is, maybe if I have to pick one skill, it would be learning how to properly document. So similar to what Jan already said, maybe independent of the tool they are using, but learning how to properly document or create metadata in maybe our RDM language is one of the key skills that would improve a lot. And yeah, this would really help. But this, on the one hand, we can educate the PhD students, tell them how to do it. But on the other hand, you would also need leadership commitment from the PIs supervising these students, saying, yeah, this is how we do it in this group, and you have to stick with it. And then maybe this comes in what Jan said, we would also need maybe then tools like an electronic lab notebook. And this all together would then help this skill.
I believe one thing that the researchers need to learn is science communication. We are facing a growing public distrust in science, so science communication is something that might help with that. And data-related skills, they will come as a corollary to that.
Yeah, maybe I will. That's quite difficult. I will probably answer from more generic perspective. As Vice-Rector, we are usually more generic in the answers, right? But I think, and it's more a wish, I'm not sure if it's a skill, actually. It's structured and organized thinking. And operating.
It's an easy one.
It's an easy one. No, but I think it kind of overarches what you were saying. You three probably, I mean, the communication, that's like cherry on top. I think that's like, you know, really castles in the sky in a way. But and that's connected to the notebooks, to what the data actually is, and how to work with that. Because the thing is that often we think about research as some kind of a eureka kind of thing, that all these innovations come out of nowhere, but they usually come out of some structured work that you do, and then from time to time, based on the structured work you do, there is this eureka, but it's not, it doesn't come out of ground without nothing. We often talk about risky research, right? But from my perspective, risky research can be only done if you have the basic, if you have the foundations. Then you can do the risky research. In the same way, you can do the communication of your results. You can do all this innovative part if you have the very basics. And the basics are the structural thinking, and connected to that is how can you tell a person who doesn't have the basic organizational skills that they should manage the data?
I don't know.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is baby steps, so taking it close to the research they are doing because of the laboratory notebooks, or just teaching them that, okay, data have some value, just pay attention to it. Or maybe rethink the way you're thinking, just try to revisit the roots of why and how are you conducting research, and maybe data have something to do with it now. But maybe following up on what you said, and it was mentioned in the presentations as well, that would apply for the younger generation. And I don't want to be too cheeky here, but the older generations, they don't have the time, they don't have maybe the incentives, and we can talk about that. But at the same time, there are these roles, these figures that these young researchers should look up to, you know, that they go for the guidance there. And if the older generation won't be caught in this change, I'm afraid that the younger will have harder time, you know, to prove themselves, to get this, the hand of this practice. At the same time, I believe that they are more willing to do so. It's more obvious to the younger generation. So we have these incentives, this context that is pushing both ways. And how do we approach that? How do we approach the older generation, the younger generation? How are we going to tackle that, in your opinion? Anybody?
I think that Blanc has something to say about that these things usually change with burials. That is, so by the time, essentially, I think we've seen it with the PhD candidates mentioned in your presentation. If they are educated in this, or even the bachelor students, they take it for granted, they will actually grow up with that. So over the time, there will become a time when these things will be normalized, in a way. The older researchers, the PIs currently at this point, are usually forced to accept this reality through the grant providers' rules. So they at least usually don't stand in the way. I don't think that you mentioned that the ELNs could be like a bad thing for the PI to tolerate. I'm yet to see a PI who'd say no to someone keeping notes, if you put it this way. That is eventually the practice already, right? So there isn't all that much of a difference. And at least at UCT, I am yet to see a PI who'd be actually doing the measurements. So they don't really care how you keep the notes, I think. So it's not standing in the way for the older generations you mentioned, and being normalized for the younger generation.
Thank you for the answer, because I said I don't want to be too cheeky, and you are doing the job for me. So, all right, we can omit the older generation and hope that they will not influence the younger generation in a wrong way, or they will not stand in a way. That's one viewpoint. Is there somebody who is more positively inclined?
You can.
I don't have a general recipe. I could just tell what works for our data stewards with the older, so-called older generation. Yeah. So for, as I said, for PhD, kind of offering courses in person is nice. And for senior scientists, it's pretty much down to individual consultations. And what really helped us, there were some groups who were interested, some PIs who said, yeah, we want to work with you. We want to restructure our whole way how we handle data in our research group. And then what really clicked for the others was telling success stories. So telling them how it worked for the other group, that we don't have to do so much work again, because we have already spent a lot of time with the other research group. And I think over time this could help. But I think we once made a calculation where, for example, my colleague in the Faculty of Life Sciences has over 100 research groups that she's serving. And if she sets up a project with each research group, that usually takes about 6 months to restructure the whole processes, and she can do about 3 to 4 research groups at once. You can easily make the calculation how long it would take to change the whole faculty with one data steward.
I can, and this is why I'm asking to some extent, because, you know, the projects that are funding EOSC, they are for 5 or 6 years, and this seems like a generational change, really. So to some extent, I'm looking up or looking for answers that would help us to speed up the process. Georgia?
So I think we need to take a little bit the responsibility to the institutions also that try to provide research, because as a data steward, I can offer as many services as I want, but if I don't have someone to help me to offer those services, my services will just be lost in the air. So basically, I would say that the problem is not coming only when someone is, you know, has a specific way they work and they don't want to change it, but also they don't see the reason to change it. So I think that the institutions have their responsibility to show to more experienced researchers that, you know, things are changing, times are changing, and we're following them. Because if you don't follow them, it's completely fine, it's your choice, but this doesn't mean that you will be able to continue research in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, because of how things are working, not because we want to leave you behind or something like that. So basically, what, for example, another example that we try to do in both CTU and UCT, the whole team, we try to give information to the PIs or supervisors that are longer time also in the university, and give them specific seminars for people who are experienced. So not beginner level, so for people who we know how they think, how they have done research for the last years, and what points they need to change, but also what this will bring to them back. So for example, when I talk to an older researcher, older years in academia, for creating a DMP, I will not tell them like the basics of the DMP. I will start by explaining to them what efforts they will have less after they create a DMP for their team, because they probably have already 5-10 researchers. So if I explain to them how the DMP is valuable for their team in general, regardless of any funder, then I can explain to them why they need it. And that's that information we need to bring to them, I think.
That all comes back to the point that Ladislav made, that we have to go back to the roots, how we think about conducting research in the first place and whether it helps us or not. All right, I'm looking at the time. Can we have a question from a Slido? I can pull it out of my pocket from my phone, or you can, yeah. And if not, I'm going to go back to the incentives.
Okay, so we have a question for everyone. We probably agree that data management needs to be fully automated. Where is the role of data stewards there?
Do we agree on that? I will extend that. Do we agree on that? Should it be fully automated? Anybody?
I don't agree. I cannot say I don't agree or I agree with just a sentence, because it's a very generic sentence. I don't know exactly what you meant, but in general, automation helps with our work a lot, because we're trying to make tools that are useful for us. But how do you think those tools are created? Without advice from data stewards? No, because we know what we are looking for. We know what will go in and what will come out of this tool. So in order to create these automation tools, the data stewards play a very vital role. We bring the information from the researchers, from the institutes, and from stakeholders, and we can give them to the IT or whoever is creating that application, for example, in order to provide the product that the end users will actually be able to use in the way they want. So that's where the data steward comes in.
Well, I'll be very short. But from my perspective, with automation, it's always about zooming in and zooming out. Like, right at this point, the automation is already there, right? Anyway, but there is the role for stewards, obviously, right? So even if the automation becomes higher, then still you just zoom out, right? And then you realize that there is still this thing that actually someone has to do. And if the automation gets to that point, you zoom out, and there is still some organizational stuff, management stuff that someone needs to do. So it's mostly about perspective that changes in time, but there will always be, and I'm a huge fan of automation and whatever, but there is always this point where someone needs to check, someone needs to make the rules, right? Someone needs to validate them, check them. So there is always spaces about perspective and zooming.
So the automation is great for all the processing, analysis, backing up stuff and these technical aspects, but there are the fundamental stuffs like you cannot automate, or perhaps should not automate, creating the DMP at the beginning of the project where you are actually supposed to think about your needs. So these are the things that could be, I guess, hardly automated.
Yeah, as long as it's people doing research, it should be people who are aware of the products of research, including data sets. So no way a DMP with a set of data sets would be just produced automatically out of the air.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, but maybe just a small addition on that. And that's something that I always tell people that apply for data steward jobs with us and think that this is a job that is going to be about data. And then I tell them, no, it's not about data, it's about a job of working with people. And I think that's why automation is not a threat to us.
We are going to get to that. So to me, it seems that automation is all nice, but we haven't just yet figured out how to handle the data, so we don't want to automate it way too early, because then we wouldn't have the necessary responsibility that comes with it. So to me, we have to work on both sides of the trenches at the same time. But going back to some of the things that I think all of you said already, and I like if I can quote one of you, to self-help group. I know it from the Czech data steward community, that it works to some extent as a self-help group. And to me, it seems that under the facade that they are discussing the tools and all the policies and whatnot, what they are really discussing is how do you deal with these researchers who really don't want to deal with this thing. And if they do, it takes ages still. So how do you see this behavioral change that is going on and the role of data stewards that they have in that? I mean, to me, it seems that the softer part is even more important than the hard one. You are nodding? Yeah, the question is, the data stewards have both hard and soft part of the job. Hard being, working on the data management plans, working with the data, and the soft is educating people, dealing with people, getting them to realize that this is an important part of their job. How do you see these two poles or these two positions of these people or these roles? Anybody?
So if I would have to maybe make a percentage on how much soft skills is needed, then it's probably 80%, and it's 20% that actual hard part. Most of the time it's just negotiating with people that they should invest time in data management, and then it's 20% actually doing maybe some data management. Yeah, and I think one needs to be aware of that this is a very also emotionally challenging job to be a data steward, and you need to be a very resilient person.
And remember that as a data steward, you are bringing your face to the researchers, who will then know that it's not an angry god in somewhere, some bureaucratic heights. It's someone who is there to help you.
You mentioned the community. I think that as far as Discord goes, it usually stays mostly on topic. And it's the support aspect that usually happens afterwards, after the meetings, especially in pubs. We usually don't sit in circus like here, although this is actually way more appropriate because it could actually start like, hi, my name is Honza and I'm a data steward. That is the practical aspect of the afternoons. Yes, that's true. You mentioned that we are a support staff. It is true that we are support staff, but we are also not the victims. We should not be necessarily the lightning rod for the fear and anger of the researchers. That is usually, by the way, self-inflicted. We are very happy to support them with your here every day, but once they start to be argumentative, not necessarily in the nicest way, we always can remind them that it is them who signed the contract with the grant provider and actually assigned to that rules. So we can help ourselves, but obviously the community is a nice touch.
It doesn't help this sentence that you just said. I mean, you are the one signing the grant. No, I'm just asking whether this sentence actually works, right? Like if someone is angry, well, you signed the grant agreement.
It usually ends the conversation, which is great because we can move on. It doesn't necessarily make anyone more happy, but at the end of the day, that is not necessarily the goal.
Can I also reply? Basically about that, everyone has their own approach how to say this to the researcher. The point is the same, but you can say it, of course, in a very nice and polite way or in a very abrupt way. But in general, when it comes back to hard and soft skills, it's literally what the others said, that if you don't have soft skills and communication skills, you cannot be a data steward. Change your career now. Don't start it at all. Like, not just about talking with PIs and researchers, you need to talk with any different kind of stakeholder, from very high up, from ministries to universities to the new bachelor data steward, the researcher who just came. You need to be able to talk to all these people. You need to be able to hear that they might blame you for what they are doing, and you need to be able to also stand your ground and tell them it's okay if you don't like this change, but this change is happening, so we need to move forward. So we need the soft skills. The hard skills are learnable. Like, everyone can learn the hard skills and the soft skills, of course. But if you don't like this idea that you will communicate with people, it's a very hard job to do. It's like impossible to do, I would say.
Thanks. Ladislav, anything?
I mean, I'm not a data steward, right? But I mean, I can tell you stories about vice-rectoral self-help psychotherapeutical
Please do.
meetings. That might be a different panel. But there are actually many parallels, right? Like, in the end, you also are telling people it's your job, right? Like, if you're fighting with a dean, right, it's your job to make the decision, right? So it doesn't help either, but it ends the conversation. That's for sure.
Thanks. I'm sorry for the audio situation here. We only have 2 mics, and I will yet again want another question from Slido. Oh, thank you. Kimetic or Jenny?
So actually, we have a follow-up question on the role of PIs in the data management. Is hands-on involvement necessary for them?
He knows.
Because you are talking about younger researchers, then they are usually educated in this. So you are targeting this younger generation. So what's the role of the PIs?
I saw Jan here was nodding no, but I disagree with him. So basically, a PI does not necessarily need to have hands-on work with the data management or the data management plan or anything like that. But what they need to do is they need to understand the project. How are you going to understand your project if you don't know what data you're working with or how they are managed? You are probably the person who is submitting outputs for your project. So I don't know how you can submit outputs if you don't know where your data are or how they were handled, who is the author of this data. So I think it's impossible, even if you don't deal at all with the data management planning and you have a data steward who talks with the whole team, to not be involved in the data management process.
I think that I was nodding, but we are mostly in agreement. I think the PIs are mostly in the role that they are supposed to decide about the fate of the data. So perhaps think about the IPR, about the potential licensing, because they are aware of the ideas of what they want to do with their research data, what they want to do with the research. But that is not necessarily a hands-on experience. The hands-on experience, at least in my view, is filling in the ELN, doing the measurements, actually creating and generating the data, analyzing the results. That's the part of the life cycle that is actually less involved with the PIs usually, and the more level up stuff like policy decisions, observing the rules and the overall goals of the research group, that is the place for the PI. So hands-on, not so much. Higher up stuff, more of that.
Sometimes there is a distinction between the factical PI and someone who is listed as PI on the project. So these people, which tend to be perhaps a generation older and have accumulated sufficient age index for the grant agency to award them with the project, they don't need to know. There needs to be someone in the team doing the work who is the factical PI. These people do need.
Yeah, maybe the PI could be the cheerleader for data management in this situation. So like encouraging the students that they apply what they have learned, listening to their ideas, saying, yeah, that sounds good. This is some work we're going to put in. And yeah, also helping, guiding this process of implementing maybe new data management practices, at least from an encouragement perspective. Yeah, and also making decisions at some point, because there will be in a lot of research groups senior staff who says, no, we have done it for the last 20 years like that, why we should change it now. And here maybe the PI can step in and say, yeah, that's because I'm the boss and I say we change this now.
I'll give you the mic. You sure? All right. Okay, so let's get to the business. Ladislav will excuse me for that, but we are too many power now because you're a Vice-Rector and I'm one of the leading people in the nationwide initiative that tries to do something with research data. Is there something we're doing wrong and we don't even know about it when it comes to gaining this new know-how and knowledge? Something we could do as in the institution, as a national initiative that would actually allow you to do your job better, and with extension, of course, to the international background. It doesn't necessarily mean that in Czechia we have some special environment. I suppose that if we are making any mistakes, they would echo across states. So, anything comes to mind that we could do better?
I think it's impossible to not think of things to get better, because not of Czech Republic, but as I said, everywhere things are evolving. So anyway, every day we have something new that we have to accomplish in this area. What I would say that I found hard at the beginning was PR. So I would like more visibility for our jobs. I feel that lately with the community and the map and everything, it's coming better and more universities and institutes can reach to us and it's more open. But I feel we still have enough time for people first to learn what is a data steward, and then also to see the opportunity to contact us without thinking that we are a scary nation or something.
Like, if you mean like institutional PR, like to the inside that people actually know what to expect, because often it's like, okay, so there is this data steward and it's part of all this administrative, mess. So we know they're there, but we don't know what they're doing, right? So that's more about internal PR, but you're talking about external as well.
I'm talking about both, because as you mentioned, you are from different places, and like I would expect that the institutes themselves that hire the data stewards to do the job should advertise that they exist and what job they do and how they can help the people. And it's not necessarily the data steward that needs to be the cheerleader to showcase that they are there and they do their job, because sometimes it comes to the willingness of your heart, that you know that the researchers are struggling and you literally knock at their door and you're saying, hey, I'm here, I can help you with that. It would be nice if someone with more power would do this part, and also in a more external way. So cross-institutionally, because now we advertise ourselves between us through the community. But there is not just the community, and we love the community, but we talk between the data stewards and the few people that know about the community. So even though there are 400 members in the community, the Czech Republic is much bigger than that, yeah?
That's something that occurred to me during the discussion that we had, that at the same time we are saying that we need to put researchers together with data stewards, but we are building a data steward community, and we are spending much of the time discussing these issues within this community, so we are making this echo chamber as well. And the question to me, to some extent, is how to open that, how to open this discussion to the scientific community as well.
I don't think that these two are necessarily mutually exclusive. There is one thing, that there is the community. It's like with the alcoholics, right? They can very well work with the outside world, but they've got a very nice, tightly knit community for themselves that understands their problem. I think that sounds almost sad, but the community understands the issues of the community better. But the Charles University in this regard has the benefit that they've got the policy. So I think that really opens the doors, at least in theory. Perhaps. We don't have it, so our doors are maybe perhaps even shut behind, in front of our noses. But when you mentioned what could be done better, and you thought about that out loud, but didn't actually present any potential solutions, was to creating the carrots. Because we are great in Czech Republic about creating the sticks, right? So punishments for not doing something, right? We've got that from the grants, usually some mandatory practices, but how to create, and that is actually the question, how to create the incentives without falling into the traps of the good hearts law. So it doesn't actually become the metric, it doesn't actually become the next goal to produce the largest amount of data sets. How to create the incentives so it actually works in the way people obey the initial, honor the initial idea of opening the data, managing the data properly, without falling into the trap of the Czech Kafemlejnek. Any ideas?
Well, I mentioned one part about the, well, it is a metric, but it's like the indirect way how to do that, like with the citations, right? Because that's one of the motivations that citations are, or well, if you go like this step by step, of course, correlation, causation, we can discuss that. But there is relatively reasonable evidence about the fact that if the data is open or attached to the paper, if there is code, then it's connected to more citations, right? So if you have some benefit for the citations, then maybe you think, okay, so how can I boost that? And then you realize, okay, first I need to have some reasonable research actually, but if I add that to it, I will probably boost the citation metric, and through that, I will get more money. Of course, in the end, it's about money, or my institution gets more money, right? But it is one way that it's not necessarily just about this Kafemlejnek kind of things, right? Or what is it? Coffee grinder, but I mean, it's not even used now, right? People still think that we have this coffee grinder, but it's not there. It's in all the fixations, but it's not active actually, right? But the way of thinking is very grindingy, yeah. But my trick usually is really trying to find these, if metrics, then the metrics that actually do something a little bit different that people maybe don't realize, like at least at first sight. Maybe then when they think about it, they see, but even if you trick them like this, it's not anything bad, right? Because that's a good trick. I mean, maybe, but that's one example. But for sure, it's not easy to find these incentives. As economist, I'm all about incentives, right? Economics, that's about incentives completely. But finding the proper ones that are really not just like these ticks in the, in some box or a table, that's super difficult. There are just several of them, and still then it's very difficult to actually persuade people that it makes sense and stuff. So yeah.
Yep, there is a lot of ongoing projects about reforming research assessment, about taking it into account other kinds of outputs. But at the local level, I think what might do quite a big change would be perhaps a small award, an award for the very best data set, being deposited somewhere.
It's actually an interesting idea. Like next week we have the how is it called in Czech? The in English, the Council for Research for Research Development and Innovation. Might be an interesting idea to have award for best data set. It would be fun. Maybe when we get new minister, well, we're not going to have a minister for research. Well, but yeah, it could be fun. Can be a challenge, but.
I'm just going to say I'm a bit skeptical about the citations as well. But as you said, and I can't be too loud about that, finding the right incentives is, I think, name of the game. You know, we don't get attributed for sharing the data enough. We don't get attributed for doing quality science, for spending time on this boring stuff that research sometimes involves. And we have to think about that. And if we get the incentives right, I assume everything else will just click. So we are now just pushing against this stream. But if we had this system in place, it would be great. I'm going to steal 1 or 2 more minutes. The final question. Could you share with us some success that you had lately regarding managing research data from the educator perspective or from the perspective of a supporting role? Anything, it can be a small thing, but something you would say like, okay, I felt really good about myself because I've done something good today. So if you have any such memories.
I have one from recent, let's say, seminar I gave to a university, and it was about general data management for beginners. And there were a few people, and in the end of the course, they actually told me that they actually cannot believe that they learned something new, you know, that they found it very boring before they came. They came because it is a requirement from funders and things like that. And then in the end they were like, I learned something, and that was great.
That's a nice one, setting the stage. Anybody else?
It's a good trick, set low enough expectations and surprise them. I have actually a doublet. I've got a PI that is MSCA fellow, and after a year and a half of working with him, first on his DMP, then on preparation of the data sets, he actually realized when preparing the data set, he might actually benefit from some ELN, and that it actually might make his life easier once he tries to publish the data of his students, because it is an unhomogeneous group. So I think this Catholicism lies the turned sinners. So this turn of beliefs is actually quite a nice success, and it relates to our, I think, learning in doing the internal PR, because we got now around 76% of the first timers doing DMP actually enrolled or sent someone from their group to attend the upcoming workshop. So I think that we both are teaching our PIs or someone from their groups to do it. Maybe we even turn some of them into believing in it. And we also are learning some of the useful stuff internally between ourselves. So we are now better in communicating with the PIs, maybe perhaps even motivating them. We'll see about that next week.
About the other guys.
So I'm now at the data stewardship coordinator since 1 year, so the success stories are getting less and less. But before I was data steward, and I think there one success story was that about after 1.5 years on the job. So yeah, I always had the impression, I don't know, I'm doing something, I'm raising awareness, but I don't know if any change is happening. But then a professor once approached me at the coffee machine and said, yeah, now I see that you really, really have kind of changed something. And I'm really glad that you are here at our institute, because I finally can find the data of my students on the server.
I guess that's something. Ladislav, Jan?
As a researcher, I was reviewing a paper which came with data. I was able to actually arrive at the same results the researchers were presenting. I was amazed.
That's a nice one.
I'm thinking as an educator that might be a bit more complicated. I'm not so sure about that. Apart maybe from the fact that in my courses, because I now teach data science and data analysis in R, that part of these courses actually is, or the very beginning is data management and how to treat data, not the methodology itself, but that I actually really start from that you need to have reasonable data, you need to know what it is, and then you start analysis, not the other way around, that you care about the data only when you find a mistake at the very end. That it's the other way around. But maybe one interesting story, because in the previous panel there was one of the panelists said that I don't need to have proper, let's say, documentation for my code because I know what I'm doing. And yeah, well, I'm not so sure about that, because I have some personal, experiences returning to my code. I'm not a computer scientist, right? So that's probably because I'm just an economist, so my code is, specific. But I had no idea what I was doing. So if it were properly commented on, that would certainly help. So I think that was some kind of epiphany that this actually helps. I mean, it was a few years back. Now I would probably put it into GPT or Gemini and tell me what it's supposed to do and comment it, right? And it would probably work. But that was my real life experience.
Well, that's a hope. I mean, everybody who has ever written a code didn't document it well enough and then return to it. I mean, it happened to me a couple of times. Like, what the hell was I thinking? I have no idea what this is supposed to do and why this way. Thank you very much, everybody. Wonderful presentations, wonderful discussion. Please, if you want to continue having such pleasant discussions, everybody is staying here for at least a poster session, yes, hopefully. So don't hesitate to approach us, and yeah, have a nice rest of the day. Back to you, Veronika.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I mean, it's up to you. You guys look so nice. It's great looking at you. I mean, there's nothing wrong here. We're just going to put some other slides behind, right? I just have some technical stuff. I don't know, do you have any closing words before I say all the stuff that's happening?
I can say thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for, I hope, enjoying the presentations the same that I did. We tried something new this time because, this is like the 4th or the 5th EOSC conference that we are having, and we tried to make less presentations, more discussions. I'll be happy to know whether you enjoyed it enough. And the second part, the one that's going to be introduced now by my colleague, is directed to young researchers and to involving and incorporating broader group of people into thinking about data and research data. So let us know, please, if this works. If not, we're going to try something different next time. And if it works, we will do something else as well. So thanks.
All right, I just have a couple of last things to say to you, and then we're done. So tomorrow, we hope you will join us tomorrow for 2 parallel sessions, one on repo builders, repository builders, and one on young researchers. We as the UX team have 1 workshop there, so shout out. It's going to be great. And otherwise, we have a bit of an extra long break now. We have until 5 till the poster session officially starts, and then you have until 17:30 to vote. So how you vote, you take your little paper that you got, you walk around, you see which poster is the best, and you just write your number here, and then you put it in like a little EOSC basket that we've prepared for you, and that's basically it. So take a look around, see what you like, and vote with for your favorite. Yes. Yes. Also, one thing I need to say is that please, there will be slides running here afterwards, so feel free to use them for meet and greet. It's like there will be slides going with different people that maybe you would be interested in meeting. So take a look at that, and then you can perhaps find them in the lobby and talk to them also. So that's just something that you should know about. Oh, grab some alcohol on your way out. I'm so sorry. I just heard yes and yes. Right. So I think that's it. We have some feedback. Yes, I think I already summed that up. So we have some feedback here. Please scan the QR code if this is your last day. I think tomorrow we will also have the QR code. Yes, it's also on your badge. Thank you. So just scan it, leave us some feedback. We would be very happy to hear for it. Also the poster sessions, if maybe it's overcrowded, they should also be in that document. No? Oh, that's only the abstracts. Okay. Well, you can read about it at least. All right. I think that's it. Did I forget anything? Hopefully not. All right. Then enjoy your evening, enjoy the poster session, and here he comes.
Maybe one last thing, big applause to Veronika for managing and getting us through this day. She did an amazing job. And as tomorrow we have just the workshops, once again, please, if anybody who participated in organizing this event, if you can stand up or wave your hand, then we can have a big applause to all of you as well. So please, anybody organizing this event, stand up. Pavlina back over there. We have a PR team here. Veronika, some girls, some colleagues over here. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, and let us proceed to the next room. Thank you.